Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman, and this is the Rusty Rooster. The Rusty Rooster is an offshoot of the Rusty Hustler. The Hustler was a wider-nosed, really full-hipped swallowtail, crummy wave shortboard, almost a mix between like a fish and a hybrid and a shortboard, but for performance shortboard surfers. And the Hustler had a real wide tail, a lot of drive off the tail, and it had a channel bottom, or a Venturi channel bottom, like what we're seeing on the Rooster, but for smaller waves. So the conversation got going with how much people like the Hustler, how popular the Hustler is. What if we took that design of the channels and then ran it in a average to good wave board versus a crummy wave shortboard? And that's where the concept of the Rooster was born. People wanted to have something that they could ride every day, but then also when it started getting bigger or hollow and more demanding, where you would normally have to go up to a completely different board, have a board that fit in those rounder waves and also had control at the speeds and the hollowness of those rounder waves. So that's where the Rooster came from. Talking a little bit about the design. This board fits into that same mid-range group of boards of hybrids. If you're looking at like the Lost or other boards like that, something around the same range as like a Lost Mini Driver, as a board that can cover a lot of that, average day to better day range. This board's a little bit different than that board, and we're going to talk about a little bit about the differences. When you look at the Rooster, overall, it's got a smooth outline to it. The rocker overall throughout is a little bit flatter than what you would see in a shortboard. It's got a flatter nose entry, which is going to make the board easier to paddle and easier to get into the waves. The majority of the deck out to about here is pretty flat. And so when you're looking at the thicknesses on the Rooster, just like when we talked about the Rusty Yeti, when you look at the thicknesses on the Rooster or the Yeti, you look at the number that's written on the website or written in the catalog, you go, wow, that's actually pretty thin, and you're expecting the board to be really thin. The reason it's such a thin number is because that width goes a little bit further out. There's not the big crown in the center of the deck. And so, on a board like this, you expect it to be, again, like 2 3/4 thick at this length, and it's 2.62. So it's like a full notch down from what you're going to expect on a board this size. But it's because it carries that width a little bit further out with a little bit flatter deck profile. That's why the numbers are different than what you're expecting. That flatter deck just gives you a really confident feel when you're paddling the board, because you've got the whole board to leverage off of. And then also when you're standing on the board, you're not rolling off the crown of the board, and then keeping that flatness across and then tapering it off in the rail and bringing down the volume a little bit before you get to the rail to make it easier to bury the rail. When you're looking at this board, as far as the overall shape, we talked about the nose. You look at the tail of the board and you can see that it comes into a moderate rounded pin and really tapered off back here to give the board more hold when the surf really gets going. Nowhere near as tapered as, let's say, a Rusty Slayer or a Lost Rock Up, but definitely it's got some width forward here, and then it brings it into a nice rounded pintail, but not as much as those really gunned out boards out the back. When you look at the next thing, which is on the bottom of the board, this multiple channel bottom shape, what's the tech that's going on here? In talking with Clint and talking with Rusty and Hoy at Rusty, basically what's going on here is the same thing that's going on with the Hustler. Is the concave bottom the channel bottom brings the water in here through a wider entry, compresses it down, and then sucks it out the back of the board, right out the back here where it gets wider. And it creates a low pressure here, which keeps the tail down in the water and keeps it under control at higher speeds. So that's the ultra technical kind of engineering explanation of what's going on. The part that you want to hear is like kind of how does it benefit the board, and what it does is it allows you to ride a little bit wider width in the tail and not have it get out of control at higher speeds. So typically when you're talking about higher speeds, you really have to bring the tail width in order to create less lift. What this does on the bottom is gives you the ability to ride a little bit wider tail in faster waves and barreling waves and still have the tail give you that feel of a narrower tail, but when you do need the wider tail for a flat section or a crummy day, like, you still have the ability to generate good amount of speed on the board. So the tech side's the tech side, and like kind of what it does for you is probably a whole lot easier to understand. The other thing that the channel bottom does is it gives you a pretty noticeable break in the rocker line right here at the beginning of that exit point. And so you can see the rocker is pretty consistent to about right here where my finger is, and then here you could just see literally another stage of the rocker, a little flip out the tail. And that is noticeable in that when you have a relatively flatter rocker board throughout, not the rocker of like a step-up shortboard, but a moderate hybrid like this, any little flip out the back is noticeable, and it really helps the board fit into those rounder parts of the waves. And then also when you want to do a vertical turn or a hard snap, you have the ability to rock it back onto that kicktail. And that is, you can see it, in where this exits right here is where you can see the difference. You've got a pretty consistent rocker line, and then boom, all the way up like that. And so it's doing two different things. It's helping retain the control and the wider width, and then it's also giving you that extra rocker so that when you're flat on the board, it's going more on the center line rocker, which is not shooting off like this. But when you have it on a rail and you want to be able to turn off the top or turn off the bottom, you have the ability to rock onto that last stage of the rocker, which makes a big difference in the turning radius of the board. So this is the Rooster, the size that I'm riding right now. This is just a stock dimension 6.6, just shy of 39 liters. Good all-around board. Obviously it's not going to go into the full grovel waves, but it has a flat and wide enough nose to work in the softer surf. And then when the surf gets going, like on that narrower tail, it definitely helps. It definitely helps to have something a little bit more modern in the tail, and then to have everything that's going on the bottom. Really good choice, like what we said at the beginning of this review, for your average day, all the way up to really, really good days is where this board is going to fit in the best. And it has a lot, we talked a little bit about the Yeti earlier, and it has a lot of those just super forgiving, really easy to surf well attributes that the Yeti has, but brought down into a smaller package, and the ability to hold even better with those wider widths coming out the back, holding in those rounder, faster waves. So really cool board to check out. It's the Rusty Rooster, offshoot of the Rusty Hustler, and just a really good shape from Rusty for that mid-range up to the really good days where you're living. Any more information that you're looking for on the Rusty Rooster, check it out on our website, realwatersports.com/surfing, or you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000. Thanks for tuning in.